Every biker has an origin story. Today, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning and tell you how mine started. My first experience was both exhilarating and tragic, a day I will never forget. Welcome along for another Hangout, everyone. In our Hangouts, we discuss stories from the saddle, motorcycle experiences, and biker-related topics. Let's get to it. Every great origin story consists of three essential elements. The first is sheer chance, an unplanned event that occurs at random and could happen to anyone. The second is a connection to a life-altering force, and the discovery of destiny. The final and third element is trauma, the terrible event that pushes the emotional spectrum from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Although I didn't become a biker with a single event, there is a first experience that started that journey when I was about 10 years old. For this story, we have to go back to the 1980s. Many memorable childhood experiences include family camping, and this was one outing never to be forgotten. We were invited to camp with another family we knew from church, with kids the same age. I remember not being particularly excited about this trip because family camping was a fairly common event. But this trip became special when I found out that the family we were camping with brought a mini bike along. I had never ridden a two-wheeled motorized vehicle before. Up to this point in my life, the most excitement I had experienced on two wheels was on a bicycle. This was the random event in my origin story. Riding with a motor was not what I expected, but this first experience changed everything. I thought it would be like riding fast on a bicycle, but easier, because there's a motor. I was wrong. It was like flying. And for the first time, I felt the combination of power, even with the tiny engine, danger, and freedom. I rode that mini bike all over the campground and loved everything about it. I was hooked and wanted to recreate that experience again and again throughout my life. I began to become a biker in those moments, in a meaningful way. It changed me at my core. It was my life-altering event that gave me the emotional high needed to imprint it into my life. Now for the tragedy. At this campsite, there was a vault toilet, or a pit toilet, in an outhouse. The vault toilet was a new experience for me while camping. To this point, my camping experiences were much more primitive, without toilets at all, or more sophisticated with flushing toilets. The outhouse was an oddity to me at 10 years old. On the door, a sign was posted pleading for users to refrain from throwing rocks and trash into the toilet. This sign sent my 10-year-old brain into a flurry of questions. Why would rocks and trash be bad for the toilet? Why would anyone want to throw rocks or trash down the chute? I determined that rocks and trash would create difficulty for the people and equipment tasked with removing the waste from the vault. I figured that people would have some need to dispose of trash and would use the toilet as a matter of convenience. I was left wondering why anyone would throw rocks. No one has rocks that need disposal. Rocks can be thrown on the ground outside. There must be some reason for throwing rocks down the chute. I was determined to find out for myself. I collected some rocks and started tossing the small ones in. The sound was cool. I started throwing larger stones to increase the effect. The larger rocks amplified the sound, and I determined that bigger was better. I fixed upon a boulder at the maximum limit of my lifting capacity, and with all my effort, I transported it to get the greatest possible result. I lifted it up to teeter on the edge of the seat and committed to let it go. And loose. Now, the wiser among you know where this is going. There are those moments in life when you have just passed the point of no return, and suddenly there is this feeling beyond dread into doom. Sadly, this was one of those moments. A tidal wave of the foulest material imaginable erupted from the toilet. The front hemisphere of my body and all of the interior surfaces of the outhouse were covered except for the boy-shaped silhouette directly behind me. I learned in that moment that the sign I had ignored was not only provided to ease the work of maintenance, but to protect a very stupid 10-year-old boy from a fate that, to that point, could not have been imagined. I lowered my hands and froze in place, fearing that the stuff would get into my eyes, nose, and mouth. Hold on. I need a moment. As the reality of my condition settled into my mind, I couldn't stop myself from getting sick and vomiting on myself. I stood frozen, gagging, and vomiting for what seemed like days. Finally, my mind settled, and I started to look for a solution. I thought of the river of flowing water nearby. That was my only hope for a remedy. I slowly made my way out of the outhouse, toward the river, like the world's most disgusting, rigid stick figure, still afraid to disturb the awful coating on my head and face. After some time, I arrived at the riverbank and threw myself with my eyes and mouth shut as tightly as possible. The water was cold as ice, but it did the trick. After I was satisfied that the slick coming off me had run clear, I made my way back to camp. Thankfully, no one was there. I was able to remove my offending clothing and place the articles into a garbage bag and collected fresh clothing, a bar of soap, and a towel and went back to the river to finish the job. No one saw me, and I was glad of it. Years passed before I was able to tell anyone of my tragic story. Going from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows makes for a good origin story. This campout is the beginning of my biker journey. I never returned to that outhouse, and I can imagine the horror of the maintenance person with the responsibility of cleaning the interior, wondering, how did this happen from floor to ceiling? Then noticing the kid-shaped silhouette and knowing that justice had been served. Also, never, from that day to this, have I dropped a single pebble, rock, or pea stone into a vault toilet, and I never will. When I started riding motorcycles, I felt that I had always been a biker. Something deep within me was awakened, and I still get excited when I throw my leg over the saddle, just like that 10-year-old kid on that mini bike on that day. Let's continue this conversation in the comments. Share your thoughts about my origin story and how you came to be a biker. Thanks for hanging out with me and letting me share my story with you. I hope you enjoyed it and got a good laugh at my expense. If you would like to stick around and hang out for a while longer, click this video. If you'd rather get out there on the road, this video is for you. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them, and we'll see you next time.